Okay, good evening, everyone. I did a couple of tests, and it's very strange what's happening. The first time I record my audio, the sound is fine, so I sound like a normal human being. The second time I do this exact same test, I sound like, a very deep-spoken human being. So I apologize. I don't know which this is going to be. But if my voice sounds odd, I'm not doing it on purpose, and I apologize. It's still actually, you can still either way understand what I'm saying, so you just have to be mindful, and when the mind obsesses over the nature of the sound, the tone of the voice. This is called grasping at the signs and the particulars. It's a good example of how mindfulness is designed to keep us at the very base of basic experience. So the idea is to not grasp at the signs and particulars. And you do that by repeating to yourself, hearing, hearing. If all you did while I was talking tonight is say hearing, hearing, you'd be well on your way. You wouldn't need questions. But tonight is questions and answers. There were a lot of questions because I've been away. There are only 12 left because I deleted a lot of them. I don't know if it's just my state of mind at this time or if it's really... There were a lot of questions that at first I was going to humor or field, but I got through reading about 10 of them, and I just almost said, I'm going to stop this question and answer because it's too much questions. It's a lot of speculative questions, and no, they're not bad questions. I don't think there was one bad question. But it's not, this isn't how I want to spend my life, answering questions about this or that or the other thing. So, as a selfish act, I deleted most of the questions. If you feel, like I've said this before, if you feel that your question was one that I really should answer, then you're welcome to submit it again, but I may very well delete it again. So, no hard feelings either way, on either side. But we do have 12. I know it's a small number, but they're the ones that I feel comfortable. So, a lot of the questions are speculative. Some of them are theoretical, which I've decided I'm not really all that interested in. A lot of them, I think the most general answer I can give is, will an answer to this question really help you in your meditation practice? That's one of the counter questions. The other one is this question not a product of your state of doubt in your mind? And that's a very general, I saw that with a lot of them in very different contexts, but some of them were valid questions, difficulties you're having in your life, challenges and so on. But I'm not equipped to guide you through your life. I think that's one I would really like to be able to answer them, because it's really a concern. People have concerns in their lives. But I'll give a general answer, as I have before. When I actually fielded such questions, the best thing you can do is to be mindful. And often there is no answer to your problem. What you find out is that the problem wasn't so much the problem. The problem was that I thought the problem was a problem. If you can follow me there. Our problems generally aren't problems, except for the fact that we think they're problems. So we become obsessed and react to them and give them power. That's problematic. Okay, anyway, enough of that. On to the actual questions that survived the cut. Doesn't mean they're any better, they're just the ones that I'm more interested in fielding tonight. So let's get started. Again, I'm only answering questions from our meditation site. So if you're posting them on YouTube, which every week people do, apologize. We're trying to vet our questions. So again, 12 out of like a lot are what survived. So it's not just a free-for-all. I'm sorry. My defense is that I'm a Buddhist monk, and I really probably shouldn't be on the internet at all. So feel lucky that I'm here at all. Feel fortunate that you've got a monk crazy enough to do this. Okay, this person is a social anxiety disorder patient. Anxiety is great. I like fielding questions about anxiety. It's great in the sense that it's a great, incredibly difficult problem that is meditation is great at solving, is what I'm trying to say. So let's break apart what the problem is here. This person tries to watch rising and falling. After a few of them, the mind brings up anxious thoughts. So it's very difficult to go back to the rising and falling. General advice that I answer a lot of questions with is that meditation is difficult. This type of meditation, mindfulness meditation, if it were easy, we're doing nothing less than trying to understand the totality of reality and free ourselves from all causes of suffering, right? So it's a monumental task. It's not something that should be taken lightly. And I think a lot of problems like this, a part of the solution is to remind yourself this is going to be tough. If you're discouraged by a very little bit of adversity, you're not there yet. Right? You need to have a strong sense of urgency just to be able to bear with your own mind. If you don't have this strong will to do it, it's very difficult. So don't get discouraged by slight adversity. You can think of adversity, and that's another part of the answer here especially, is that adversity is a big part of the meditation. Learning to see how you react to situations and observing the problems. In this case, anxiety, observing the anxiety. So going back to the rising falling is not necessary. In fact, you might say it's done its job. You watched it and then suddenly you're anxious. Well, good. That watching the rising and falling put you in a situation to be aware very quickly of when you were anxious. And so then anxiety should be your object, and you should say to yourself, anxious, anxious. Watching all the physical aspects of it as well. When you feel tense, you'd say to yourself, tense, tense. If you have whatever reactions, and then if that leads to more anxiety, note that. Not trying to stop any of it. We're not even trying to stop the anxiety. We in fact would much rather understand it, learn about it, and learn about the things that we're getting anxious about, to realize that there's no reason to get anxious about them. So I hope that helps. Don't be discouraged. You're not meant to be good at it. It's a practice, and it's as much about failing as it is about succeeding, because your failures show you what you're doing wrong, and if you see yourself doing the wrong thing again and again and again, eventually your attitude changes, your behavior changes. And we're not hopeless, right? We have the potential to change. That is a part of who we are. This one's a bit theoretical, this next question, but I wanted to field it. I won't talk too much about it, but it's about the fourth of the Satipatthana. So the hindrances, yeah, everyone, that's an easy one. But the question is, how do you actually incorporate the rest of that part of the Satipatthana Sutta? Right? I mean, what mental objects is a bad translation of Dhamma. I've talked about this before, but it's certainly, I would say without a doubt, the wrong translation. I might be wrong, but I'm quite convinced that it's a very bad translation of Dhamma. Dhamma only means mental objects in the very specific context of the Ayatana, I think, is the categorization, or the indriya, the faculties. So the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the heart being the mind. And what is the object of the mind? They're called Dhammas, but only in that very specific context. Dhammas are not, that word Dhamma is very rarely used in that sense. It's called Dhammaramana. Aramana means object, so, or something like object. So Dhammaramana, that's that part. But somehow it became the translation, and it's, I think a much better translation is like teachings, right? The Buddha's Dhamma. And so my feeling and the problem you're having here gives me the sense that these were the teachings, or the aspects of reality, the aspects of the practice that are important for meditators. And so there's sort of a progression of sorts, culminating with the Four Noble Truths, but and the Bojjhangas are in there, but these are just, I would say, things you should keep in mind. They're things you would expect to arise as you progress. I mean, as you become proficient in meditation, the 7 Bojjhangas, factors of enlightenment, are going to get stronger and stronger. And so they can be an object of mindfulness. I mean, good stuff is meant to be objects of mindfulness as well. So, what did I do? So I wouldn't worry too much about those. But yeah, certainly just trying, I would put them aside a little bit and place less emphasis on them, but know that they're there, and study them and understand them outside of meditation. But yeah, when they come up, you would just say thinking, that's appropriate. Here's another person: after months of meditation, I feel like giving up because of a lot of frustration. Did walking meditation, feel terrible, and do not even feel like doing sitting meditation. And I focus on feeling of frustration, it just gets worse and worse. I do not know how to make my mind take it, just as another experience. Again, it's difficult. I mean, it's a valid concern. Meditation is not easy. There's so many aspects of what you're going through that you have to learn to stop stop allowing to become a trigger. Right? There's so many little triggers and aspects of this that you focus on one thing and you're missing another trigger, right? And so it triggers you and you become triggered, and there's a result of frustration and so on. When frustration gets worse, that's not a problem. I mean, worse is just your judgment, your value judgment of it. You say, oh, it's stronger, so it's worse, or it's more, or it's continuing, so it's worse. Look at what else is going on. What do you mean by worse? How can frustration get worse? Is a good question. Because either you're frustrated or you're not. But what does it mean it's worse? I mean, it seems like a dumb question, really. I think if you're not familiar with the way the mind works, you might think, well, yes, of course, you can be very angry and you can be a little bit angry, but not really. Most of what we call very angry is just physical. Right? So there's all the flustering in the body and the flushing and the heat and the tension and all of that. And so we say, I'm very angry. But no, actually, it's just, it's triggered I guess you could say there's a mental intention that has created all this. But what I'm trying to get at is look at what part of the frustration is physical. You have a headache? Well, that's not frustration. Do you feel tense? Well, that's not frustration. Do you feel hot? Feel unpleasant? All of these are aspects of the experience that you should be mindful of. If you're not, they'll trigger you. They'll trigger more frustration. But even just the fact that you can see your frustration, and you may be now blaming the meditation on it, if you look a little bit deeper, you can see that, well, actually, what's to blame is the frustration. It's a really bad thing, and it'd be much better off without it. Meditation is designed to let you see that and make you feel really, 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 really bad about getting angry. Once you feel bad enough, the anger is going to have less power over you because you have less impetus to be angry. You're less keen to get frustrated. You bang your head against the wall enough, eventually You'll learn that banging your head against the wall is a really useless thing. Okay, so what's the crux? This is basically about itching, but what's the crux of this one? Starts to become pain, and sometimes I feel something else. What should I say to myself? Feeling. No, you'd say, yeah, feeling or itching or so on. When it becomes pain, then you would say pain. When you want to scratch, you say wanting to scratch. If you scratch, say scratching, or rubbing is maybe a bit better. But yeah, all of it. Not trying to stop. If you scratch, just be mindful of it. Or if you're not mindful of it, well, note that and try again next time. I mean, it's difficult, but there's no controlling or forcing or bad consequence, bad decisions. If you move, you feel pain and you move, then be mindful of the moving. Try to be mindful of the wanting to move. If you get good at it, eventually, you'll be less inclined to move, and you'll have less need to move, and so on. Here's one that's a possible subject for a longer video, but I've done one on death, how do Buddhists deal with death. That might help, but not particularly loss. Buddhism and grief. I did write an article recently. I wrote something for my parents when my cousin died, just recently. I put it on my weblog, so you can go to yuttadhammo.sirimangalo.org, and I think it's still up there. But I think that was also about death. Never mind, that was also about death. So I guess particularly about grief, whether it's death or not, it's important to let yourself grieve, but it's also important not to think that grieving has some purpose. So again, it's the same answer that I've said 3 times now tonight. It's not about stopping or thinking of things as bad. It's about learning about them, studying them. And eventually you teach yourself that grieving is useless. You don't say, no, I shouldn't grieve, I should let it go, no, I should stop. You don't say that. You see, oh boy, this is useless, and eventually you say, yeah, no, enough of that. Nibbida is this, what I'm getting at here is this idea of nibbida, which is a very important aspect of Buddhism. The Buddha, again and again, you'll see this constantly, this word nibbida in the text, in the Pali text. Dispassion, it's translated as, or disenchantment, where you see the problem enough that you just stop making problems. You stop it. The problem is you. It's that you think you have this aspect of you that is gung-ho for that. Hey, grieving time kind of thing. Which is a weird way to look at it. Rather than to say you should grieve, you shouldn't grieve, you should study the grieving, right? Which I think would make people upset, because they think, well, what about all that thing that happened? I'm not allowed to think about it? You can. You should say thinking, but no, I mean, really more interesting is the grief. It's kind of boring, because then the grief's gone and there's nothing to fuss about. We want to fuss, right? We have this bad experience, so we say, okay, time to grieve. I'm going to get all excited and upset about this. Buddhism takes the fun out of it and says, that grieving is a good object of meditation. And when you focus on it, you forget all about what you were grieving about, and, well, the grieving goes away. But more importantly, you learn about grieving and how it's not that you become reactionary to the grieving, like, oh no, I'm not going to grieve, right? Again, it's about just seeing how useless it is, and how it doesn't make anything better to grieve. Not that you can tell yourself that. What I'm trying to get at, it's not something you can just explain and say, no, don't grieve, no, grieving is useless. It's something you really have to see for yourself. So that's why you have to allow yourself to grieve and be mindful of it, so that eventually you've had enough and you never grieve again, because it didn't help you. So you say to yourself, sad, I mean, simple stuff, read my booklet. Oh, I don't know how this one went through, but no. The best way, this I should have probably deleted, I'm sorry. Best way to follow the middle way is by noting the impermanence. Read my booklet, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to get into best ways, this way, that way. That's a good one. So, mindfulness is like a doorkeeper because it guards the eye door. How does mindfulness guard the doors of the six senses? So it's figurative speech. I mean, the mindfulness isn't really a guard, but if you think of a doorkeeper, you have all these people coming in, right? And the doorkeeper's job is to keep bad people out. So what mindfulness does, it's like a filter. When you see something, mindfulness is what allows you to just let seeing be seeing. Right? Mindfulness is where you remind yourself that's seeing. So as a result, the experience comes in. You still see, you still hear, you still even think, right? Meditation, mindfulness isn't about not thinking. But what doesn't get through is the bad guys, the liking, disliking, drowsiness, distraction, or the liking and disliking, let's make it simple. The liking and disliking don't come through. The reactions don't come through, the delusion, the conceit, so on. Worry, fear, all the bad stuff doesn't get through. So that's how it's a guard. How does it do that? Well, the process of the mind is to experience something and then react. So it's like pain comes and then you say, this is bad. So mindfulness changes that. When you say, this is pain, by saying to yourself, pain, pain. When you do that, it changes from this is bad to this is pain, which is really just, I think it's called a tautology, and it's meaningless. It's just saying it is what it is, which has no result. I mean, there's no untoward consequences. Deeply ingrained depression since childhood is getting weaker thanks to practice. Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Good to hear. My noting is mostly on pain, anger, disliking. Sometimes can grasp rising and falling, but still feel pain. Should I put my effort to focus on rising and falling? No. Note on painful feelings. Yeah, it's fine, stay with the painful feelings. I would say after a while, if it's the same pain, you can give it up, because you'll find that your mind loses the obsession after some time, and then you can go back to the stomach. So it's not about effort, it's about enough, and then come back. But if your mind won't stay here, go to whatever it will stay with. And also the fact that it'll stay with it, what is making it stay with it, like the liking or disliking and so on. But yeah, rising and falling is just because eventually you're going to get to the point where, at times, you'll get to the point where there's nothing else. So it's a good base to keep you present. An anchor may be a good analogy. Suffer from social anxiety disorder. I'm nervous leaving my home. Feel very shy meditating in front of other people. I'm going on the path all alone. I mean, it's interesting. Shyness and all this is, part of it is this obsession with what other people think, right? It sounds like that's a part of it. So it's something you should be aware of, like, realize that it's just ego. That we sometimes misattribute this to shyness and fear. Shyness, I mean, the word shy is a euphemism from a Buddhist perspective. It's ego. You have ego, which is, I think, a surprise. People say, I don't have ego, I'm shy. No. Shyness is ego. Shyness is this need to have other people's approval, this high, strong sense of self. It's conceit, it's very much tied up with I, me, people looking at me funny and so on. So see it for what it is, I think, is a very useful tip, because that helps you realign this and stop making allowances for it. I don't mean to be hard on you, because it's a really serious issue, but maybe to realign the way you look at it. And of course, don't worry about, or don't make the answer going alone, because you really should have a teacher, and if you don't have a teacher, then a meditation group can be very useful. And so don't excuse yourself because of your shyness. I mean, think of that as a big part of the meditation, to be examined and meditated on and to be mindful of. But baby steps, I mean, if you really suffer from social anxiety disorder in a clinical sense, then take it one step at a time. You saw the other guy up above, they were depressed from an early age, which means that it's a very deeply ingrained habit, but they said it's getting weaker, so there you go, there is hope. When I'm noting, I can't hear what I'm noting in my head. I hear it at the mouth of the throat area. I can't hear my own voice in my head. Is this wrong? I mean, you shouldn't be trying to hear the noise in your head, the sound in your head. The word is like any other thought. I mean, when you think something, do you actually hear your own voice in your head? Probably not to any recognizable degree, even, well, most of the time. But it's just a thought, but it's meant to create a clear thought, where instead of you say this is bad, you say this is this, by saying pain, or so on. But it shouldn't be in your mouth, your throat. If you notice that, then you would have to be mindful of that. Say knowing, or feeling, or so on. Here's a curious question. Why are regressions in morality still possible when practicing Satipatthana? I mean, I guess the technical answer is they're not. The problem is, what do you mean? The problem is you have to understand what we mean by practicing Satipatthana. Practicing Satipatthana is that moment when you say seeing, or hearing. During that time, there is no possibility for a regression in morality if it's done properly. But in between those moments, of course, there's going to be lots of regressions because we're complicated individuals. I mean, meditation isn't just a switch that you turn on and now suddenly I'm invincible. Meditation makes you invincible when, during those moments, that you're actually mindful. But those moments are fleeting, very fleeting in the beginning. So it was curious because I'm surprised that people would think that you wouldn't regress. I mean, it very much depends how intensive you're practicing, whether you regress. Okay, this person has, I think it may be, inhalers for anxiety probably. Feels like no matter how hard I try to relax. Well, there's a good keyword. I try to relax. It's common. We try to relax, but do you understand what it means to try to relax? It means stress. You're putting stress on your relaxation, which isn't a way to relax. Any time you try to relax, I guarantee, the results are what you're getting. Tension and irritation. So that's the first part. So with meditation I use to relax. Oh wait. So you might not even be practicing the meditation I teach, in which case the only answer I have is read my booklet, because if you're not going to read my booklet and practice that way, I'm not the one you should be asking these questions to. But yeah, trying to relax, that's a definite, what do you call? That's a indication. There's a word for that, where the words indicate something. Trigger in my mind. Aha, this person is there. This is the wrong idea. Trying to relax. Lying helps, but I fall asleep laying, which is I think from staying up late studying suttas, right? So you probably know what I'm going to say. Stop staying up late studying sutras. Yeah. If you're struggling with relaxation, the suttas are probably not the answer. Suttas are something you want once you've got a really strong foundation in the practice and you've kind of worked out some of the gross stuff that makes you need inhalers. I'm assuming this isn't for asthma. It's for, I don't really know what inhalers are for. I think for anxiety. But try to work more on your mindfulness. But again, read my booklet if you haven't. or go somewhere else. But here, yeah, in this context, my booklet. Oh, someone snuck in a new one. That's fine, I think it's a good one. How does one remove pleasure that one feels for some objects? For example, eating a cake. Yeah, so again, we're not trying to remove pleasure. We've never really... Pleasure is totally innocuous. It's an experience. I mean, it's only guilty of being impermanent suffering and non-self. I talk sometimes about how experiences are innocuous, are innocent. They're not, actually. They're poison. They're like poison. Is poison innocuous? Of course. Poison isn't going to kill you unless you drink it. There's nothing wrong with poison. But pleasure, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not pleasant. It's not satisfying is the word. It's pleasant, but it's not satisfying. It's not happiness. I mean, it's objectively something that is bad for you, like poison. Pleasure is something... It's not bad for you if you experience it, but it's bad for you to cling to. But everything is bad for you to cling to. Nothing is worth clinging to is really the whole point. If you want to understand Buddhism and get an answer, to recontextualize and realign your question with a proper understanding, nothing is worth clinging to. So it's not about removing pleasure, it's about removing clinging to pleasure. And why? Because it's not worth it. And so how? By observing it and by learning that pleasure is not worth clinging to because it's impermanent suffering and non-self. So there you go. All right, that was a half an hour. I know everyone's wondering where I am and seeing that I'm slacking off making videos. I have to say, it's always hard to get a real strong urge to make more videos. I think, there's lots of videos out there already. But we'll see. I assume I'm going to keep... I mean, the big reason is because I'm already giving talks here anyway. But there's no one here yet. We have no meditators. I think I closed the center till the 18th, so I'm assuming on the 19th there'll be people coming. But I think I'm going to stick to that, and unless there's meditators here, I'm not going to be too keen anyway on making videos. Meaning, there will be more, but probably in conjunction with those brave souls who have actually come and undertaken a meditation course with us here. There's the ongoing online meditation courses, which they're not all working. I think some people have not been able to contact me, but I'm still getting people calling me every day, and we're doing these video conferencing, which is great, really. Yes, it's nowhere near the greatness of coming to do an intensive course, but it's a good preparation. Somebody called me recently on the phone, and he was wondering if he should come for a short time right now, and because strike while the iron is hot, or as the Buddha said, if your head's on fire, rush to put out the fire. Or should he wait until he can come for the full course? And I said, well, you might be better off to wait till you can do the full course, and in the meantime we could do the online course. And he was quite excited about that. So it's a good way to prepare for the full foundation, for the full-on intensive experience. So I just thought I'd plug those because I think they're helpful, and I'm very happy to engage in all that. But videos, well, there'll probably be more still coming. And answering these questions, I think, is a really good compromise, because it's direct to people who have issues. Again, apologies for all those people who had their questions deleted. Most of you are people who I think are sincere, so you can always post it again, try and get my attention, and convince me that it's worth answering. I make no promises. Anyway, that's all for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a good night.